They say most breakups don't start with a fight, they start with silence. Mine began the night I realized I was the only one still trying to be heard. My name is Trista Parker. I'm 28 years old, and this is the story of how I learned that love doesn't end in flames. Sometimes it just fades until you can't feel the warmth anymore. When I first met Jimmy, I thought he was the kind of man who made ordinary moments feel cinematic. He was wild where I was careful, loud where I was quiet. He could turn a grocery trip into an adventure, a late night drive into a confession booth. I was drawn to that fire, and for a while we burned bright together. We'd been together for 2 years when I started noticing small cracks. Nothing dramatic at first, a missed call here, a forgotten plan there. The kind of things you excuse because you love someone. But over time, the excuses piled up like dust on glass, dulling everything I thought we were. It started when he got promoted at his marketing firm, the job he used to complain about endlessly. Suddenly, he was staying out late, attending networking events that somehow always ended at rooftop bars. I tried to be supportive. You deserve this, I'd tell him when he came home smelling like whiskey and perfume that wasn't mine. He'd kiss my forehead and say, "You worry too much, Trista. It's just work." But even then, I could feel it something shifting. His attention, once sharp and warm, was now scattered distant. I'd talk, and he'd scroll through his phone. I'd reach for his hand, and he'd pull away to answer a message. Then one night, I heard a name I hadn't heard in years. Emma. His ex. The girl he used to say taught him how not to love. I ran into Emma at the agency mixer, he said, casually sipping his beer. She's doing great. We actually caught up for a bit. I froze. You caught up? He shrugged, eyes glued to the TV. It's not a big deal, Trista. We're adults. It's just conversation. But over the next few weeks, Emma's name kept slipping into our life like an unwanted echo. Emma says hi. Emma's team is killing it this quarter. Emma just got back from Italy, good for her. Each mention chipped away at something inside me. I told myself not to overthink. I'd always been the grounded one, calm, rational patient. I wasn't going to turn into that jealous girlfriend who couldn't handle a conversation. But love becomes heavy when you're the only one holding it up. One Friday night, I cooked dinner, his favorite, the one I used to make when we were broke and happy. Caramelized pork jasmine rice and ginger soup. He came home late, smelled like bourbon and strangers, and didn't touch a bite. Not hungry, he muttered, loosening his tie. I waited, tried to sound calm. Jimmy, can I ask something? He sighed like I'd already ruined the night. What now? You've been somewhere else lately, I said softly. Even when you're here. He leaned back, eyes tired but cold. Not everything's about you, Trista. That hit harder than I let him see. I didn't say it was, I whispered. I'm just trying to understand what changed. He scoffed, shaking his head. God, you're so serious all the time. You make everything heavy. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I just need a break. I blinked. A break? Yeah, he said, his tone casual, rehearsed. Just some space to breathe. Space from what? From all this, he said, waving vaguely between us. You, me, work, everything. I feel like I'm living the same day over and over again. I stared at him for a long second, trying to find the version of him I used to know somewhere behind those empty words. Finally, I nodded, if that's what you need. He seemed almost relieved. Thank you, he said, his voice soft now. You'll see, this'll be good for us. He left that night with a duffel bag and his usual cologne, but for the first time the scent didn't comfort me. It felt like smoke after a fire. As I stood by the window watching his car disappear down the street, my chest tightened. I told myself it was temporary, that sometimes people need space to find perspective. I believed it. I wanted to. But deep down under all that hopeful noise, a small quiet voice whispered something I didn't want to hear. He didn't need space. He needed permission. And I had just given it to him. That night I sat alone at the dinner table, the food cold and untouched. Outside, the city hummed like nothing had happened. Inside, something in me began to unravel slowly, silently, almost mercifully. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there staring at the empty chair across from me, realizing that love doesn't always explode, sometimes it evaporates. And when it's gone, all you're left with is the sound of your own breathing, wondering when exactly you stopped feeling like home to someone. The first week without Jimmy felt like living in a quiet house after a storm. Everything looked the same, but nothing sounded right. I kept myself busy. Work errands, anything to stop me from checking my phone. I told people, we're just taking some space. I even said it with a smile, as if I believed it. But silence is a strange thing. It starts out peaceful, then turns into something that hums beneath your skin. By the end of the second week, it wasn't peace anymore. It was distance stretching further every day. His social media told me more than his words ever did. Photos at rooftop bars, drinks clinking, new faces, new laughs. He looked happy, or at least he looked like he wanted people to think so. And then came her, Emma. At first, she wasn't in the pictures. Just her name in the comments. Missed this crew. Next time, drinks on me. Then one photo made it clear Jimmy's hand on her back, her head leaning just close enough. I didn't even feel anger, just a kind of numb clarity, like watching a movie I already knew the ending to. A few days later, my phone buzzed with a message from Mia, a mutual friend who'd always been good at staying neutral. MIA. Hey, are you and Jimmy still together? Me. We're on a break, I guess. MIA. I hate to be the one to say this, but I saw him out with Emma last weekend. They were holding hands, kissing. I thought you should know. I just stared at the screen, not even blinking. Then I typed thanks, Mia, and turned my phone face down. That night I sat on my bed, staring at the space where his hoodie used to hang on the chair. The air felt heavier than usual, like even my apartment knew something had shifted. I didn't text him. Not that night. Not the next day either. I waited until the following evening when the calm had settled just enough for me to keep my voice steady. He opened the door looking surprised, but not guilty. Just inconvenienced. Trista. You could have called. I didn't think this was a text kind of conversation. He crossed his arms, eyes already defensive. Okay, what's this about? I heard you've been seeing Emma again. His jaw tightened, just a flicker, but I caught it. You're listening to gossip now, so it's not true. He hesitated, then shrugged. We've hung out a couple times. But Trista, we were on a break. You can't be mad about that. I stared at him, searching for a trace of remorse, but there was none. Only that quiet arrogance people wear when they've already rewritten the story in their favor. You said you needed space, I said. Not a replacement. He laughed softly like I was being dramatic. You're making it sound like I cheated. We weren't together technically, and honestly, Emma just understands me in ways you never did. The words stung, not because I believed them, but because they were rehearsed. He'd been waiting to say them. So you and I were done, the second you said you needed space. He rolled his eyes. Don't twist things. It's not that deep. Emma and I just talk. She's easy to be around. You make everything heavy. I took a deep breath. My voice came out calm, almost gentle. You call it heavy. I call it real. He sighed like I was exhausting him. God, this is exactly why. You overthink everything. I looked at him, the man I used to believe was my person, and felt something inside me go still. I didn't raise my voice, didn't cry. I just nodded slowly and said, okay, Jimmy. If space is what you needed, you can keep it. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done waiting for you to remember what you wanted. Trista. But I was already stepping back. You said you couldn't breathe. Go breathe then. I turned and walked away before he could answer. Down the same hallway we'd once stumbled laughing through at midnight, now echoing with the sound of my own footsteps. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. It felt like the world had just ended, but nobody else noticed. Cars kept moving. People kept talking. Somewhere, someone was falling in love. When I got home, I packed up the last traces of him, the spare toothbrush, the sweater he always left on my couch, the photo from our first trip together. I didn't throw them away. I just put them in a box and sealed it shut. Because that's what endings really are, not explosions. Just quiet decisions you make while folding someone's clothes for the last time. I placed the box in the closet and whispered to no one. That's enough. And for the first time in months, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like peace trying to find its way back in. The first morning after I walked out of Jimmy's apartment, I woke up expecting to feel broken. But instead, I felt light. Not happy, not healed, just strangely light, as if someone had turned down the constant noise in my head. There were no texts waiting for me, no apologies, no, we need to talk, just silence. And somehow that silence started to sound like freedom. I began building a new rhythm. Morning coffee without rushing. Music instead of phone calls. Workdays that felt fuller, not because I was busy, but because no one was draining the life out of them. It's funny, for so long I thought loving Jimmy gave my days meaning. Turns out all it did was fill the quiet with chaos. By the second week, I started doing things for myself again. I joined a yoga class, planted a small herb garden by the kitchen window, even started reading before bed instead of scrolling through old photos. I was remembering who I'd been before I shrank myself to fit inside his world. Still, every now and then, that ache would sneak up on me like muscle memory. I'd hear a song we used to play in the car and feel my throat tighten, but instead of fighting it, I let it pass. Grief doesn't always need an audience. Meanwhile, Jimmy's carefully curated image began to crack. His social media posts, the same ones that once made me feel small, turned chaotic. Cryptic quotes about finding balance photos with captions like, "Sometimes you outgrow people." Translation things are falling apart. Mia texted me one evening while I was brushing my hair. MIA. Not my business, but Jimmy and Emma had a massive fight at a bar last night. About you, apparently. ME. About me, MIA. He accused her of lying. She said he's still hung up on you. It got messy. I stared at my reflection hairbrush midair. For a second, I didn't know what to feel. Vindication, sadness. But all I felt was distance, like watching strangers reenact a story I used to care about. A few days later, Jimmy texted for the first time since the breakup. "Jimmy, hey, just wanted to check in. How are you?" I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back. "Me, I'm good. You?" He replied instantly. "Jimmy, I've been better. Things are complicated." I left it at that. Didn't ask, didn't care. But the next few days, the messages kept coming. Funny memes. A photo of our old cat with the caption, "He misses you." A late night, "You still awake?" Each one felt like a small tug on a thread I'd already cut. I didn't reply to any of them. Not out of anger, out of peace. Then, one Sunday morning, I opened my curtains and froze. Down on the street, leaning against his car, was Jimmy. Sunglasses on, pretending to scroll through his phone like he just happened to be there. I almost laughed. It was so predictable, the grand gesture after the damage. When he saw me, he straightened immediately. "Trista," he called, waving. I hesitated, then went down. Because sometimes the only way to end a story is to hear the last line spoken out loud. He smiled when I approached, that same lopsided grin that used to melt me. Only now it looked forced. "I was in the area," he said. "Thought I'd say hi." "Hi," I said flatly. He shifted awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. "You look good." "I am good." That threw him off. His smile faltered. "Listen, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." I crossed my arms. "Okay." He blinked. "That's it? That's all you're gonna say?" "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Maybe that you miss me too." I shook my head slowly. "You want the truth, I don't." He stared at me confused, like the words didn't compute. "Emma and I aren't talking anymore," he said quickly, as if that would matter. It was a mistake. I see that now. I took a deep breath, my voice steady. "No, Jimmy, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to see what losing me felt like. And now you know." He looked down, shame flickering across his face. "That's not fair." "It's perfectly fair," I said softly. "You wanted space. You filled it with someone else. And now you're upset that your choice didn't save you." His eyes started to water, or maybe that was the sunlight. "Please, Trista," he said, reaching out. "I just want to talk. I don't want to lose you completely." I took a step back. "You already did." He froze as I turned and walked away. No yelling, no drama, no tears. Just quiet finality. When I got back to my apartment, I closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding, not from pain, but from relief. That's when I realized healing doesn't always arrive with a celebration. Sometimes it comes disguised as indifference. That evening, I sat at my desk, opened my journal, and wrote a single line. "Peace isn't loud. It's the silence after the storm." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. 3 months passed. Enough time for the seasons to change and for me to realize that the world hadn't ended, only a chapter had. By then, I'd settled into a new version of my life. Work was steady, my promotion had just gone through, and my apartment, once too quiet, had become my sanctuary. I rearranged the furniture, painted the living room pale sage, and filled it with plants that didn't need much attention but still thrived. Maybe I saw myself in them. There were moments I'd still catch his shadow lingering in my mind. Not the man himself, but the ghost of the version I loved. The version who used to hum old songs while cooking breakfast, who laughed at my bad jokes, who once swore, "You're my calm in all this noise." But that man didn't exist anymore. He'd been replaced by someone who mistook freedom for escape. One evening, while closing my laptop after another long workday, Mia called. "Don't hang up," she said, her voice already loaded. "I know you don't care, but you should probably hear this." I sighed, leaning back on my couch. "If it's about Jimmy, I really don't need." "It's kind of bad," she interrupted. "He and Emma broke up. Apparently he found out she was seeing someone else behind his back. Then he had a huge argument with his boss and quit his job. He's been posting weird quotes about loyalty and betrayal." I let out a small laugh, not cruel, just tired. "That tracks." "He's been asking around about you," Mia added quietly. "I think he regrets everything." "Regret doesn't mean change," I said almost to myself. That night, as I washed the dishes, I found myself thinking about him anyway. Not with longing, but curiosity about how people can destroy something beautiful and then act surprised when they're standing in the ruins. A few days later, it happened. His name appeared on my phone screen again. Jimmy, hey, I know it's been a while. Just wanted to say I've been thinking about you. I miss you. I stared at the message. My hands didn't even shake this time. He'd finally said what I used to beg to hear, I miss you. But it landed differently now. I typed nothing back. 2 days later, another message arrived. Jimmy, I know I messed up. Emma was a mistake. You were the only real thing I ever had. I thought I wanted excitement, but all I found was noise. I reread it twice, not because I was tempted, but because I wanted to understand why it didn't hurt anymore. It was like watching someone apologize to a version of me that no longer existed. I finally replied, Me. I hope you find peace, Jimmy, but don't look for it in me. He didn't answer. That night I sat by the window journal, open pen, hovering over the page. I wrote slowly, letting each word find its place. Some people think they lose love because of timing or mistakes. But sometimes they lose it because they mistook care for control, loyalty for comfort, patience for weakness. And by the time they realize it, the person they took for granted has already learned to live without them. When I closed the journal, I didn't feel righteous or proud, just free. Weeks slipped into months. Work got busier. I started mentoring a new intern, a bright, eager girl named Tessa, who reminded me of myself at 22. She once asked, "How do you stay so calm all the time?" I smiled, because I've already lived through chaos. I didn't mean Jimmy specifically, but maybe part of me did. Sometimes peace looks boring from the outside, but to those who've tasted chaos, peace feels like luxury. Then, one Friday afternoon, I was walking back from a meeting when I saw something on my phone that made me stop mid-step. A new post from Jimmy, a black and white selfie with the caption, "Sometimes you don't realize what you had until it's gone." Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments. But I could tell it wasn't for them. It was for me. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. He was still chasing closure from a story that had already ended, still rewriting our past, trying to make it sound tragic instead of deserved. But the truth was simple. He didn't lose me because of Emma. He lost me because when I gave him the chance to choose me, he chose himself instead. And now I was choosing me too. I closed the app, put my phone face down, and looked out the window. The city lights shimmered across the glass, reflected twice, once for the world I left, and once for the one I was building. Maybe that's what healing really is, not forgetting the story, but learning how to live peacefully after the ending. And in that quiet apartment, surrounded by plants and sunlight, I finally whispered the words I'd waited months to believe. I'm okay. 6 months after that final message, Jimmy became a story I told myself less and less often. He'd faded into the background noise of memory familiar but no longer haunting. Then one Thursday evening, life decided to test my peace. My company was hosting a networking event, downtown, soft jazz, expensive lighting. Too many people pretending to like the wine. I wasn't planning to stay long. I just wanted to make an appearance, shake a few hands, and go home to my quiet. Halfway through the night, while talking to a client, I felt that instinctive prickle on the back of my neck, that strange awareness that someone's watching you. I turned. And there he was. Jimmy. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically still tall, still dressed sharp, but the energy was gone. The confidence that once filled the room before he even walked in had dimmed. He was standing beside Mia, of all people. I later found out she'd brought him as a +1 from her new firm. She saw me at the same moment he did, and her expression screamed, "Please don't kill me." Jimmy's eyes widened slightly, then softened into something like nostalgia. He walked over before I could decide whether to leave. "Trista," he said, smiling like we'd just bumped into each other at a grocery store. "Wow, fancy seeing you here." I matched his politeness. "Jimmy." He gestured around the room. "You look like you belong here, professional confident. I heard about your promotion." "Word travels fast." He laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, guess it does." A pause stretched between us, the kind filled with all the things people want to say but can't anymore. "You look good," he said finally. "So do you," I lied. He gave a little laugh, rubbing his neck, a nervous tell I used to find endearing. Now it just made him look unsure. "I've been freelancing," he said, trying to get back on track. "Good for you." He sighed. "You don't make this easy." "Make what easy?" "Talking to you." His voice softened. "I know I messed up, okay. I'm not here to rehash everything. I just thought maybe we could start fresh. Grab coffee, no expectations." For a moment, I just looked at him, at the man who once made me believe I wasn't enough, now standing here trying to reclaim a version of us that no longer existed. Jimmy, I said quietly, I don't hate you, but I don't have a reason to see you again. He frowned. You really think it's that simple? It is. He let out a short, humorless laugh. You can't just pretend we never existed. I'm not pretending, I said. I just stopped living in the past. Something flickered behind his eyes, anger maybe, or desperation. You used to love me. I did, I said evenly, until you made sure I couldn't. The words hit him like a slap. He blinked, lips parting as if to argue, but no sound came out. A few people nearby glanced our way, sensing the tension. He noticed too because he forced a smile, that same brittle mask he always used when his pride was cracking. You think you're better than me now, he snapped under his breath. Just because you got a promotion and a new wardrobe? I stayed still. No, Jimmy. I'm not better. Just healed. His voice rose slightly too loud for the room. You think walking away makes you strong. You're just cold, Trista. You've always been cold. I looked at him for a long moment, then said softly, No. I was patient. And you mistook patience for weakness. That landed hard. For a second, I saw the realization in his eyes that I wasn't the same woman he'd left behind. People were definitely watching now, pretending not to. Jimmy straightened, smoothing his jacket, forcing a grin. Whatever he muttered. You'll regret this someday. Maybe, I said, but not today. And with that, I turned and walked away. The sound of my heels against the marble floor was the only thing I could hear. I didn't look back once. Later that night, Mia texted me, MIA. I don't know what you said to Jimmy, but he broke down crying in the bathroom after you left. He told someone, she's not the same girl I hurt. I stared at the message for a moment, then smiled faintly. No, I wasn't the same girl. I'd outgrown her, the one who waited for him, explained herself, begged to be seen. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat by the window, and watched the rain trace lines down the glass. He had called me cold, but the truth was, I'd just stopped burning for someone who only ever wanted warmth when it was convenient. Maybe that's what closure really is, not an apology or a reunion, but the quiet understanding that the person who once had all the power now has none. And when I finally turned off the light that night, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt free. By the time half a year passed after that event, I had stopped measuring my days by how long it had been since Jimmy and I last spoke. I'd stopped counting altogether. My life had shape again. Soft, stable, quiet in the way peace always is. Mornings filled with sunlight through half-open curtains, the smell of coffee drifting from my small kitchen music low in the background. I'd taken a trip with friends, learned how to swim properly, even signed up for a pottery class. My hands had started building things again. Not memories, not compromises, just clay and stillness. Then one morning I opened my inbox and froze. Subject. Please read this. I promise it's the last time. From Jimmy. I hovered over it for almost a minute before clicking. Jimmy's email. I know I've reached out before and made a fool of myself. I just need to say this properly. I'm sorry for everything I did to you, Trista. I didn't appreciate you when I had you. I thought I wanted freedom, but it turns out I just didn't want to face myself. You were the calm I mistook for boredom, and now I can't find it anywhere else. Ryan was a disaster, work's been a mess, and I keep meeting the same kind of people, the kind who only take. I finally understand what you meant about peace. I miss that. I miss you. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know that you were right. I read it once, then again, and felt nothing. No bitterness, no longing, not even relief. Just quiet understanding, the kind that comes when the lesson is already learned. For a long while, I stared at the blinking cursor of my reply window, debating whether to answer at all. Then I typed, Me. I appreciate the message. I'm glad you're being honest now, but we're at very different places in life. I don't hate you, and I don't wish you harm. I just don't carry what happened anymore. I learned what peace feels like, and I'm not willing to trade it for anything familiar, especially not the past. Take care of yourself, Jimmy. He replied within minutes. Jimmy, so that's really it. No chance, no coffee, nothing. Me, there's nothing left to fix. We ended a long time ago. I just stopped pretending otherwise. Jimmy, I don't know how to move on from you. Me, then start by not looking backward. He didn't reply after that. 2 weeks later, Mia mentioned in passing that he'd moved back to his hometown, new job, new apartment, same patterns already showing, and I didn't feel the need to know more. That weekend, I moved too into a brighter apartment with wide windows and enough space for the life I was building. While unpacking, I found the small box I'd sealed months ago, his sweater, the old photo. the tiny traces of a story that used to define me. I carried it to the balcony. The sky was turning gold. One by one, I dropped each thing into a bag for donation, not in anger, but gratitude, because even mistakes can become mirrors if you stare long enough. When the last piece was gone, I stood there, hands empty, heart steady. That night, my friends came over to celebrate the move. Laughter filled the space that had once been crowded with silence. At one point, Mia raised her glass and said, "You know you're glowing lately." I smiled. "It's the piece." She grinned. "Keep it. Don't ever trade it." I nodded. Never again. Later, when everyone left, I sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights blink against the horizon. For the first time, I didn't think about Jimmy at all. Instead, I thought about Trista, the woman who had survived it all, the one who'd learned that love isn't supposed to cost your dignity, that silence can heal louder than any apology, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. I whispered into the stillness, half smiling. I didn't win. I just stopped playing. And outside, dawn began to rise, soft, golden, endless.